Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Big League Breakdown. Today, we are going to discuss the recent firings in the MLB. Bud Black for the Rockies and Derek Shelton for the Pirates. Adios, amigos. My name is Tyler. Joining me, John, Will, and Bobby, as we get into a couple of horrible teams. One somehow
Putting it
worse than
mildly.
the other. Um,
Wait a minute.
and
Somehow.
somehow.
No,
They
wait,
only had
wait, wait,
7 wins
wait.
as of
Let's
this
put it this
recording, dude.
here. Hold on. It's not just they're worse. It's that the Rockies somehow have half the wins the Pirates do,
Yeah,
and the Pirates have 14.
look, we talked a lot about the White Sox last year for how bad they finished and like one of the worst teams of all time. Rockies are tracking right now.
Oh,
So
they're well ahead of
They're
that.
going.
they're,
They're going to be worse.
they're trying to make a change to save face. But yeah, interesting that they fired they fired Bud Black on one of the 7 days that he got a win this season. So messed up, so messed up.
Yeah, I finally got one. Need you in my
Yeah.
office.
That'll show them.
But yeah, let's talk about the Rockies first, actually.
First pick.
Let's talk about the Rockies first because Bud Black, excuse me, has been a longtime manager there, a guy who I know has been respected in that clubhouse for a while, but you can't really.
It's the winningest manager in Rockies history.
It's a winning, yeah, easy to
Again,
say.
that means
but,
nothing.
By the way, I think he
It's still a stat.
he was wasn't
It's
he
a
like
stat,
300 games under 500 in that time or something too? Yeah, tough scenes.
It's just he's been around forever.
Yeah,
for them.
nine
They're
seasons.
not an old club.
9 seasons with the Rockies, and I get it's at that point for them where it can't get any worse. We got to make a change, and Bud Black is the one at the door. But obviously, I mean, we talked about this ad nauseum with this team for a while now. There are so many issues on this team. Pitching is always a concern with the Rockies. Their bats suck. I mean, we're looking at again potentially the worst team of all time. So, what does this firing even mean for you? Because again, Bud Black not producing, but he's been there for so long. It's gonna kind of be weird to see him not on the Rockies.
They're just trying to find a fall guy for this. I mean, it's not the right move, and hopefully we're going to get more into what should be a legit or what should be worth a manager firing, because when you enter the season and your team is expected to be bad and you are bad now, granted you're beyond bad, but like this isn't a situation where much was really thought of the Rockies. Like they were expected to be the bottom of the West and among the worst teams, if not the worst team in baseball. It's just that, yeah, they're doing it a little worse than you probably would have hoped. But that's not Bud Black's fault. It's just that there is absolutely no direction between ownership or the general manager, anything for this club. I mean, part of that probably is, yeah, there are pitchers that do not want to come to Colorado because they're going to watch their stats balloon. But I mean, the Rockies basically had been scuffling for a long time. And it seems to be, if anything, from just bad scouting to bad choices from the general manager. They thought they probably had a good young pitching core in Marquez and Freeland and Senzatella or whatever within the past 5 years, and that has not panned out whatsoever. Because if they're not pitching well, they're probably hurt. And so that's just been something they've had to stick with. And then there was the whole, they traded Arenado and then they signed Bryant. The return from the Arenado deal has not panned out at all. Chris Bryant is literally the next Anthony Rendon. Like, that's a scouting thing to me, because things just did not work out with the players that you picked and the people that you thought you could build up from the trades. And then when it comes to the signings in the offseason and stuff, sure, they had like Daniel Bard kind of work out for them, at least the majority of his stint with the team. But other than that, they seem to get veteran pitchers on one-year deals trying to make a new name for themselves, or at least show they have a little bit in the tank so they can sign with the team the next year. And I'm not saying that's not what the Rockies have to do, because I think they're kind of stuck on that. but they can still at least try to focus on pitchers with certain makeups that fit better in the ballpark instead of either nothing and relying on the young guys or just throwing a dart at a board late in the offseason with who's still around. So, I mean, yeah, the offense hasn't panned out at all to start this season. That was the one thing that looked a little bright, at least with some of the young guys. But to just fire Bud Black is just saying someone needs to be the fall guy for how bad we've done. Let's just do it on the manager. And that just doesn't make sense for a team like this.
Yeah. We're going to talk about it with the Pirates, but they basically gave him a pile of shit, and I don't really know what he was supposed to do with it. I guess I get the fact that maybe you're looking for a change, but I mean, again, like Will said, you're looking for a fall guy, but at the end of the day, everybody knows in that organization and out of that organization that the roster is not good enough. It hasn't been good enough, and it is looking like in the future it won't be good enough unless something changes. So to pin it on a manager, and again, maybe you want some, new blood in there that can bring some juice to the team. That's maybe something you can kind of talk about, but I just don't think that you can expect a manager with this roster to perform. Now, could they have been better than whatever 70 and or
Yeah.
77 and
70.
30?
Holy fuck. They've won 70 games through the first 40.
7 and 33 or whatever.
They
their
needed a head
record
start
is.
just to not make the playoffs.
But
I
yeah,
was going to say.
I mean, I don't. It's not good. But John, like, what? I mean, there's so much wrong with the Rockies, and it just doesn't feel like there's much positive.
Yeah, like Will said, this does not fall on Bud Black whatsoever. This falls solely on the GM. Your decisions of trading your franchise player and Nolan Arenado to bringing what you thought was, the MVP caliber player of Chris Bryant, who anyone could have told you that was not going to be the case, but whatever. Bill Schmidt, you are the problem. You are the issue. All in all, this is your fault. You gave this man a worse team than last year. He has no players. He had no players. But honestly, you know what I'm impressed about? And I will give the Rockies fans credit for this one. They were losing 21-0. That ballpark was still packed. I'll
They
give
were
it to
getting
them.
some action. Just
I was
not
gonna
from
say
their
it had to be
guys.
some giveaway or something.
They stayed to see 21 runs come across their home plate, and it was not for their team.
Watch
Yeah,
a baseball team say, yeah, as a giveaway, if you can make it through 9 innings, we'll give you a gift card on the way out.
Well, you get a gift card, and you get a gift card. Starting pitcher shows up. You do not get a gift card.
I gotta find the stat that I put in there the other day because it was based on their run total. Now I can't find it, but it was something like I think they had gotten outscored like I think it was 75-21 over 6 games or something like that.
Yeah.
Like
Lord.
absolutely unheard of.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
So I mean there was four or five straight games where they had let over 10 runs in.
Yep.
So like I don't know if the Rockies suck, but they're the worst team in the league, but they're not this bad. Does Bud Black stay around? Like that's my question. Like I don't.
Yes.
Is it a fair thing that he got let go because of their performance being as bad as it is, or like
No.
was this going to happen regardless?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, the fact that it happened right after the 4 straight games of double-digit runs given up, maybe, but like, I don't know what the Rockies are thinking because what do they expect the firing to do? Hey, you're not gonna break the all-time record for most losses in a season. Cool. The Rockies are screwed anyway because given MLB's anti-tanking rules with the draft, Rockies could have the worst record in baseball this year. They They can't get. They have the worst record in baseball ever. They can't get in the top 10 this year in the draft because they've been in the top 5 the last 2 years or something.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
so which is the same situation the White Sox were in, or are in, I believe, this year with the draft is because of still the same anti-tanking rules. So the Rockies are screwed no matter what. What is this going to do? Maybe give them an extra 5 wins. Like, this just is not thought out well. It's at all. It's stupid.
Let's go to the Pirates and maybe,
More
maybe.
stupid.
Well, I was gonna say my position on this might change, and it's because I have a better
Bias?
pulse on the situation. Seeing the games in and out, but Derek Shelton gets fired, by the Pirates after they get swept by the Cardinals last week, and I had believed that the Pirates were going to take a step back based on the roster moves they made this season. I think I still had them close to a 500 team, but right now they are not even close to that. I think they're like 14 or 12 games under 500, whatever it is.
I think I had them finishing 4th.
Yeah, I had them
I
finishing
had them fourth ahead
as
of the
well.
Cardinals, but I still had them at like 74 wins.
Yeah, I think I was
we
around
may
that.
have balked on that one, boys.
Well,
Yeah.
so this is what I'll say about this, and maybe if there's any Rockies fans out there, you can let me know if it's a similar situation. I agree with this firing, but I also realize that he's also not the problem, if that makes sense, and I'll tell you why. It's obvious that this team, and I had talked about it nauseam, that this team is horrible. Their starting pitching is good, but they didn't go out and get bats. They got Tommy Pham, who's like batting like 130 this year, with 1 home run. Shocker. The team that
I'll
they
take
put
it.
around, the team that
Cubs is
they
vibing.
the team that they put around, for Shelton to build on was not good. But I can also say, as a manager, his decision making was very questionable. I thought he managed his bullpen extremely ineffectively at times. He put guys that were continuously getting smacked around in high leverage spots. Colin Holderman was like his favorite piece, and the guy would give up like 3 runs every outing. And just the way he used some of his players didn't make a lot of sense. So in that sense, I do think he deserved to be fired from a managerial standpoint. However, I don't agree he should have been fired in the sense that, again, what are you supposed to do with a roster like this? This is not a coach problem. This is not a GM problem, even though it is as well. It's all of the above. It's a owner, it's a manager, it's a GM. All of the above need to really go. And I've given Ben Cherington a lot of grace because I don't know what he's actually being allocated by Nutting in terms of finances and what he's able to spend and stuff like that. But he's also done a really poor job. They have not been able to develop any hitters. Their offense this year is unbelievably poor. And it's just it's so predictable. It's so predictable that this was going to happen. Shelton was always going to be the fall guy again, somewhat rightfully so. But I just give him Tommy Pham in the offseason as his big free agent signing. It's like, what are we supposed to do? Horowitz still hasn't played this year. Supposedly he's supposed to be coming back next week, but I mean, you look at the starting rosters that the Pirates have put out in the last couple weeks. It's appalling how bad it is. So, I don't know. From an outsider's perspective, Will, like, I guess you look at the record and based on what I said, and you can, you know, I guess what's your opinion on the situation?
It's not that far off from what I said about the Rockies. It's maybe a tad more in that, like you said, you had the Rockies closer to 500 with your prediction, and no one in God's green earth that has the right state of mind baseball wise would have put the Rockies anywhere near 500 this season. But the Pirates didn't do anything in the offseason, so there was no real expectation that they were going to be contenders. Yeah, they had Paul Skeens for a full season, but I mean, that was it. So as an outsider, to me, it looks similar to the Rockies where they're performing worse than what they expected, but like it's not the manager's fault, or at least it doesn't appear to be the manager's fault mainly. It's the fact that ownership and or the GM did not put the pieces out there to field a competitive team, and they're sticking with what they have, which is very lackluster. So they just so happen to be doing worse to start the season than they thought, especially the Pirates, given the last couple seasons having hot starts to the season. So it's just it's just the fall guy is all it is in the end. And so if they're going to change it, they have to actually spend money or make trades and bring in some talent instead of just sticking with what they got and hoping for the best.
And the noise for Nutting and Sherrington have been a lot louder this year. People were also calling for Shelton's firing, but the fans also had the same sentiment of like, what is he really supposed to do? They have two batters right now. Their highest average batter is IKF, and he's batting at 275. Brian Reynolds, who's been a perennial all-star, is having a bad year. He's batting 198. They have, I mean, their 6 through 9 hitters on a nightly basis all bat under 200. And I don't, again, like, you as a manager can make these moves and plug guys in, but if you're given, oh, I got to start Tommy Pham, Jack Sawinski, Triolo, Canero, I got to start three of those four guys tonight, like it's not going to be a good time. And now like O'Neal Cruz is like hurt, so it's all going to shit for the Pirates. I don't know.
I
I
will
just
say this really quickly, just thinking back to what you said about um how you
Oh,
didn't
hi.
think he managed well um with putting in like Hold'em in situations late in the game and he wasn't performing well. I can see that maybe there was a sense probably of Shelton where the team's doing bad. I'm just gonna so he probably didn't think too much about it, but also his mindset could have been just these are the guys that should be um our back end guys, and we're not going to go anywhere this season, so might as well give them the shot to try to close it out. But that's about it. I mean, I'm not saying it was the right decision because you always want to be competitive, but there also could be a sense of if you don't think you're going to perform, you're just going to try to put the guys that you want to be familiar in certain situations in those situations, regardless of the outcome, to hopefully they get better with the experience.
Yeah, and John, I'll kind of ask you this question because you have somewhat of a similar or had somewhat of a similar situation. Because the thing with Shelton too is like the team did get better over so he was with them for 5 seasons. They had improved the last 2 years, and it was kind of like, all right, it felt like they were on the cusp. And then this year, if they had spent any money, you would think, all right, maybe they could be a wild card team. Um, so like I have seen this team improve under Derek Shelton, but again, now he's like the first guy that takes the blame when the team is doing shit. So it's like, I guess what's your take on that? Because I think Brendan Hyde's kind of been under fire for a while because like the roster they have, but he's also brought them to a place where they've they've reached pretty, good heights. So it's kind of a tough call.
Uh, so it's different in the sense of this would be Brandon Hyde a couple years ago. Here's the reality is that the manager's job is to put out the best lineup possible for that game. I believe that that is 100% the manager's job, whether or not players are, feeling 100% or whether or not they need rest. Obviously, that is a managerial decision as far as the lineup is concerned. So, from what I can tell, that is what Derek Shelton was doing. Was he was putting the best players out there? Was it every single night that that he was perfect in every decision, perfect in every lineup? Obviously not. But the reality is that you can only control so many things as a manager. You do not control, you know, who essentially plays for you, who the organization brings in that sense, uh, because that's just not your job. As a general manager, Your job is to get the best players for your manager, for your team. I don't think your general manager did that, but I also think your general manager is running on a budget that is full of popsicle sticks and toothpicks, and he's on a hope and a prayer. Your issue is your ownership that would rather burn every bridge in Pittsburgh, including the Roberto Clemente one, than put out money and put out a winning team. So.
So now it's got. Here's the thing too. It's gotten so bad that we're in year 2 of Paul Skeens, and they're already talking about like, hey, we need to free Paul Skeens, like trade this guy, get any value, which is crazy. But here's kind of where the issue lies for me is that the Pirates. Let me get this straight. The Pirates are not in their playoff window. That's pretty apparent, right? But the building blocks that you thought you were going to have to build around to have a playoff roster are starting to age, and that window is starting to close. Like Brian Reynolds was a guy that they had signed to a long-term deal. Obviously, he's having a bad season, but he's also starting to get up there in age. He is, I mean, he's still 30, so not like terribly old. Um, Cabrian Hayes has not really turned out to be the player that they want him to be offensively. Um, and then a lot of the guys, again, on offense, Henry Davis hasn't panned out yet. But a lot of these guys that they thought they were going to have for potential playoff teams or these really good teams where they could have these younger pieces around them are starting to get to a place where it feels like, damn, we're going to be in another full rebuild again, aren't we? Like we have the starting pitching. Like the starting pitching is not a problem. We could trade away a lot of guys, a lot of these prospects, because all of our top prospects are still pitchers, which is great, but you can only throw 5 of them out there. At the end of the day, you can only lose so many games 2-1 before you start to lose your mind. And I'm afraid the Pirates for once, the last 2 seasons, but prior to this one, for once had some hope again that hey, this is a team that's on the cusp. Like they could legitimately with a couple offensive pieces start to get in the conversation. Now it feels like we've fallen back again, where we're in for another 5 to 7 years of absolute shit. And honestly, the biggest concern with that is Paul Skeens. I don't know if it's his just the way he holds himself. He ain't gonna stay around for that. He's already pissed off at the world, and you can't up a generational talent because you can't, support a team around him. But I mean, it's a scary spot, man, because I was happy for like 2 seconds, but now we're back to reality, and a rebuild feels imminent. So.
There's no point in rebuilding, Ty. There's
Yeah,
no point. You're not going to put a team around a star to yield any results. There's no point.
Yeah, and
I mean, I think the Pirates are still if Bob Nutting is Scrooge and he gets visited by the ghost of baseball past, present, and future and wakes up tomorrow and comes to his senses, I still think that I'm not saying this season, but I think the Pirates still are within the capabilities by spending a little bit of money to get into a playoff window in the literally could be as early as next year. But there is absolutely no indication that's going to be the case. And so therefore it's insanity.
yeah, I even talked about it when it happened. It was like they signed Tommy Pham, and it's like, all right, well, obviously that wasn't a good signing. I didn't really want Alex Verdugo, but I would have taken him, and even he's doing like decent things in Atlanta. While we're stuck with a guy who's batting a buck 76 with no home runs this year, and a slugging percentage of 213. Like it's insanity that this is what we resorted to. I mean, I'm at the point where, like, again, I think they got to move on from some of the, and I don't want it to be the case, but I think they're going to have to start moving on from some of these top prospects pitching and trading for some established bats because they can't develop hitters and they got to hit. Like, I if it keeps happening, I'm definitely going to do stats on this, but I got to see the run support that Paul Skeens has got in his career because I legitimately think that the average might be like he gets less than 2 runs a game of support. The amount of times he's lost games 2-1 is unbelievable. Like it's actually insane that he just doesn't get any support. So, um, all in all to say that yeah, Shelton takes the blame for this, and while again, he probably deserves some of it, this will not change, and I'll keep saying it. If Bob Nutting doesn't go, if Sherrington, I honestly I would love to see Sherrington on a team that spends money just to see what he can do. But even him, I'm like not that happy on right now. As again, I just feel like another rebuild is around the corner, and it hurts. It hurts a lot. So,
Ty, I have a trade for you.
oh God, Paul Skeens.
No.
Oh.
I'm gonna
And
give you a
Bob
real
Nutting
one.
or Charlie Morton.
Who's gonna give you a real one?
No.
Paul Skeens and
All right. Tyler O'Neill for Andrew Heaney.
So
You want an
that's funny.
established bat, huh?
That's funny. We're about to record a episode for the Orioles, and Andrew Heaney is actually a name that came up in my head for something we're going to talk about for that. So that's funny. Yeah, honestly, dude, I'd take that trade. You get like I will take and Tyler O'Neill is not having a good season. I will take anything more than what we have.
you're not just taking that, you're taking 3 more years of Tyler O'Neill.
Dude, at least he bats barely over 200. At least that's like more than half of our roster can say. So,
Actually, I mean that's 100% true. That's the thing, and that's why I also don't blame your manager. And I think he's literally just a fall guy, so that your GM can keep his job. I was looking at your team's like batting average. The amount of players that are batting below the Mendoza line
it's
is
crazy.
absurd.
It's crazy. Like literally half their roster. And it's so watching the Pirates and seeing their box scores and stuff. It's almost hard to believe that there's I think 2 or 3 teams that are worse than them in average, which I think is like the Rockies, and so take that with a grain of
Rockies
salt.
and White Sox.
Yeah, it honestly might be those two, but it like I know those teams are bad, but it's almost hard to believe that there's teams that could be worse because the Pirates score like 1 run a game. Like it's crazy. Yeah, man. Sad Pirate fan as always. It doesn't feel like it's ever once you like feel like you have a little bit of hope, it's no.
Sad Pirate.
Well, so quickly
Hey,
stepping away.
guys, there's a new T-shirt. Sad pirate fan as always.
Yeah.
So quickly just stepping away purely from Rockies and Pirates sense, but still in the idea of firing managers. Is the question I want to get to is what does justify firing a manager middle of the season? I mean, the Phillies did it a couple years ago with Joe Girardi, put Thompson in the position, and the Phillies went from being near the bottom of
I would
the
say
East and ended up making
7
the
and
playoffs.
35 is
Well, so
probably
well,
a
and then,
bottom
so that's
line there.
well, but that's the question: is when you have a team that does that bad with expectations of being really bad, should there be the firing, or is it more of something when it's middle of the season, a team that is expecting to be playoff caliber, for example, since we already mentioned them, the Orioles, if they want to try to reignite some type of spark or the talent that they have in the team by getting out the guy in charge, whether it truly is that person's fault or not. Like what to you justifies meaningful
in the
mid-season
Rockies
firing?
case, in the Rockies case, you can't be hurt any worse. So doing this now, honestly, is almost like a free interview too. Like who they got the third base coach?
Third base
Yeah.
coach is, and the funny thing is,
bench
guess
coach
who's
got fired
who's
too.
the bench
I
coach?
know. I
Yeah,
was gonna
but
bring
you know
that
who the
up.
bench coach is?
Clint Hurdle.
Clint Hurdle.
I know. I was gonna
Clint
bring that
Hurdle.
up.
Rockies legend.
So it's you know what, you're going that bad. You know you're gonna get rid of him at the end of the season anyway. Why not just do it now and get basically a free interview out of it? I mean, look what happened to Rob Thompson. It's not like it doesn't happen. Girardi goes, Rob Thompson fills in, and all of a sudden they're like, well, we're just gonna give him the freaking job. Like, what are we?
I know, but
waiting on here?
the expectations for those teams are vastly different to what they were going.
Oh, I
into their
agree.
seasons.
I agree. But I guess what I'm saying is just like you might as well try to get some productiveness out of what you're gonna do with the staff at some point. So you might as well do it now and see what happens.
I mean, I
'cause it
think
can't be
from
any worse.
I think from a team standpoint, I think if there's any, barring injuries, where like injuries are the reason that you're kind of losing, if your standard is worse than it is the previous year, I think that's one thing. And then obviously expectations as well, like you
Proves wrong
said.
it wasn't enough.
I think expectations as well, right? Like you now, I do wonder if I think obviously teams internally set expectations for the team, but I wonder if it gets to a point where the fans have expectations, of course, and once that it gets a little bit noisy from the fans of like they're starting to like kind of talk about it, and like if it puts pressure on teams to make a move or at least try something, so like they're at least captivating their fans a little bit because
No. If you run a successful organization, the fans are the last people you listen to for this simple reason. If you say you have a good like manager, say you have like a bad stretch, they will want heads
Oh,
to
no,
roll.
yeah.
They will want guys gone on a regular basis. So
I'm talking about like if you have expectations for your team that are not getting met per se, and then the fans are also like getting on you, it's just like does that add that extra pressure to be like, all right, now
Has to.
let's do something to get these
I mean,
fans
it
back
has
into
to,
it.
right? But the problem is that like a lot of fans are still going to go to the games for the most part. So
I
it's just
know,
like
which
you
I
know, you have
hate.
to, yeah, like you almost like
It's like golf.
you
You're
almost kinda
angry,
have to
but you still
protest with
keep
your wallet.
coming back.
Yeah, you
It
almost got to
literally is
protest
like
with the
that.
wallet. It's the only way they're going to feel it. They're not going to listen to every pundit on Twitter just talking about like, oh man, I knew he was a bad signing. Oh man, I knew he was never going to work out. Oh my god, fire everybody, bring it all down.
I
I'm
mean,
used to it when
truthfully,
Philly sports.
I do think that yeah, it's definitely like internal stuff, but
Got that
it
nice
is
up by the fanatic.
it is just interesting to be like, all right, like if the media and the fans and the baseball world are realizing how under expectations we are, it's probably time for us to do something because this is kind of a bad look.
I want a baseball team for one season run by fan bases where it's purely like you get the radio talk and it's like, all right, after this game, what do we want to do? All right, we're selling this guy, and then a trade happens, and they're like, "Wait, we were joking. We
Not
really mean
baseball
it."
related, not baseball related, but can you imagine if the Packers, who are like town owned, did that? So instead of like going out
Town
and
hall,
find, like, the
baby.
best coaching candidate, they just had like a town hall at Green Bay, and they're just like, all right, who wants to coach the team this year? It's like township little league type.
All right,
thing.
here's
It's
the
like, all right, who's
raffle.
available?
We're gonna pick out a name.
Yep.
all right, number D5379. Damn it! Oh, what?
Here is Steve. He coached football once and was promptly fired for being drunk on a high school field.
He has a resume
100 followers on TikTok.
of leading his daughter's flag football team to 10 wins and 1 playoff loss.
That's
He is
impressive. 10
also
wins.
the current bottom of his fantasy football league, and has still
And
not
in his
completed
relationship.
his bet.
Okay, I knew somebody was going there. You're terrible today.
I am terrible today.
I don't know, man. I think that it's a lot of the times it ain't fair to managers. It really isn't. But
You're hired to be fired.
exactly, right? Like it's the same thing with any sport.
We said this
Also,
before, though.
the
when we
Rockies
talk
are
about
losing
We
4-1.
said this before about the White Sox, though.
Water's
when
wet.
it comes to last season, it's kind of the safest job ever because there's not a lot of expectation other than don't be 7-35 in May.
You would
Like,
think-
seriously.
You would think the Rockies' job would have been the same situation. Nope.
Oh,
Like-
he found the
At
bottom. He
least
found the
Bud's
bottom
been
of
here.
what's too far.
That's it. That's the other thing. Like what he's been around for so long. Like he's got to find another home somewhere. As not. As
I
a
don't think he
manager.
gives a crap
he
at this
retires.
point. I think he's
He
like,
retires.
yeah, he's
Yeah.
done.
He retires.
Yeah,
It was an
maybe.
easy paycheck. He got to be around baseball, and now it's like, all right, I'm good.
Gets to live in Colorado. Great place to live. Honestly, yeah,
Beautiful
might pack
place.
it up. Might pack it up. But yeah,
High
but
altitude, though.
The Pirates are also winning 4-0.
it's miracles do
So there you go.
happen sometimes, I guess. That is all for us here at Big League Breakdowns. You can follow, follow us on Twitter at BL_breakdowns. big league breakdowns everywhere else. Make sure to like the video if you like it. Subscribe to the channel for more, and we will see you next time.
Wear your seatbelt. You might get fired next.